GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christys, on GB News and GB News Radio.
So Dewbs and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political budgets.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, hello there. It's 6 o'clock and I'm Michelle Dewberry. Coming up tonight, the Tory party conference yet again dominates the news. There has been so much we can get our teeth into. The Health Secretary talking tough on the BMA. He's blaming them, saying that they are making these protests, these strikes, political. Do you agree with him? He's also getting tough when it comes to the whole gender ideology situation and what should be the most important in the NHS. Should it be gender or should it be things like your actual biological sex when it comes to same-sex wards? Lots of conversation, lots of criticism coming his way. Where do you stand on it all? And as well, Michael Gove, he's been speaking out. He reckons that this Parliament is on track to deliver 1 million homes before the end of the Parliament. Do you agree with that? Is it realistic and is it enough? And of course, the big news of the day is Suella Braverman doing yet another speech. Of course, you know the drill by now. She talks tough, she gets criticised. She's talking about hurricanes when it comes to migration and lots more. We're going to have it all and more. But before we get into it, let's grab tonight's latest headlines.
Michelle, thank you and good evening to you. Well, as you've been hearing, the Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, has been warning of a future hurricane of mass migration into the UK in her speech to the Tory party conference in Manchester today. Miss Braverman said that as well as stopping illegal migrants from coming to the UK, she'll also make sure that legal migration is held at reasonable levels. GB News presenter Nigel Farage criticised the speech, saying the government was out of touch with ordinary voters. Ms Braverman said the Conservative Party will do whatever it takes to deter the boats.
The Legal Migration Act, which will come into force in the coming months, now means that the only route to asylum in the UK is a legal route. The Act means that those arriving illegally will be detained and removed back to their home country if possible, or to a safe third country like Rwanda. But all of this is ultimately a question of political will. And be under no illusion, we will do whatever it takes to stop the boats and deter bogus asylum seekers.
And the Home Secretary says the heckler who interrupted her Conservative conference speech should be forgiven and let back into conference. In these exclusive images obtained by GB News, Andrew Boff, who's a Conservative London Assembly member, was escorted from the hall after saying the Home Secretary's anti-trans policies amounted to homophobia. The Prime Minister has told GB News he's the person to deliver change to Britain. Rishi Sunak defended his record on illegal immigration, saying for the first time ever the number of small boats crossing the English Channel from France is down by a fifth. He also reiterated his plan to halve inflation and accused the Labour leader of being light on real policy.
You've got Keir Starmer, who, no one knows what he stands for, flip-flops left and right. The country can see through that. That's not leadership. What I'm offering is different. I know people want change. I'm the person to deliver it because we're going to do politics differently. You saw that on net zero. You'll see that this week. That's what you get from a Conservative government.
Well, the Prime Minister is expected to confirm in his Conservative Party speech tomorrow exactly what his position is on the future of the northern section of the HS2 rail project. Businesses are said to be demanding immediate clarity following reports Rishi Sunak may be planning to scrap the line from Birmingham to Manchester. It's understood the Prime Minister will announce spending on other infrastructure projects for the north in his forthcoming speech. Foreign prisons could be used to help combat the crisis of Britain's overflowing jails. The government's considering renting prison cells overseas to tackle prison overcrowding here. Speaking at the party conference, the Justice Secretary Alex Chalk proposed the move with spare male capacity down, 258 places left in UK jails only. Now, murderers who carry out sexually motivated attacks will automatically face a whole life sentence under new powers planned by the government. The legal expectation on judges will apply retrospectively to those who've already been charged with the crime but are yet to be sentenced. Justice Secretary Alex Chalk saying most dangerous and depraved killers, when they get life, it should mean life. Male to female trans people could be prevented from using female-only hospital wards. Under new government plans, trans patients would be treated in separate accommodation, which the campaign group Stonewall says will be humiliating and dangerous for them. The Health Secretary Steve Barclay outlined the proposal at the Conservative Party conference earlier.
We will change the NHS constitution following a consultation later this year to make sure we respect the privacy, dignity and safety of all patients, recognise the importance of different biological needs and protect the rights of women.
Junior doctors have threatened further industrial action in November and December unless they receive a credible pay offer. And they've been demonstrating outside the conference centre in Manchester, where the Conservatives are holding their conference, alongside consultants on day 2 of a 3-day strike this week. Radiographers have also walked out for 24 hours. The BMA is demanding a return to the negotiating table, but the government says after accepting the recommendations of an independent pay body, this year's 6% pay rise is final. The Prince and Princess of Wales have been in Cardiff today to meet members of the Windrush generation. Prince William and Princess Catherine greeted Windrush veterans and descendants during their visit, marking the start of Black History Month. They met with Windrush generations at the Grange Pavilion Community Centre to hear about their contribution to the Welsh community. The royal couple joined members of the Grange Pavilion Youth Forum as well for a quick competitive game of table tennis. You're with GB News across the UK on TV, in your car, on digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying play GB News. This is Britain's news channel.
Thanks for that, Polly. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm with you till 7 o'clock tonight. Alongside me, the PR consultant Alex Dean and the contributing editor at Novara Media, Michael Walker. Good evening, both of you. You're very welcome tonight. And you know the drill, don't you, on this programme? It is not just about us. It is very much about you guys at home as well. What's on your mind tonight? You can get in touch with me all the usual ways. You can email gbviews@gbnews.com, or you can tweet me or X or whatever it's called these days at GB News. Now, of course, the story that is dominating all of the news agenda today is another day at the Tory party conference over in Manchester. Shall we just take a moment to bring ourselves up to speed with all of the day's goings-on? I'll cross live there now. Our political correspondent, Catherine Forster, keeps us company. Good evening. Catherine, my viewers, please bring them up to speed with the highlights or the lowlights, whatever you want to reflect on, of the day.
Yes, well, Rishi Sunak today trying to get everybody talking about what he wants them to talk about rather than what he really doesn't want us to talk about, which is HS2. We do expect it to be scrapped the Birmingham to Manchester part tomorrow in his speech. What we don't know is what he's going to do in its place. But he spoke to our political editor, Christopher Hope, earlier. He was highlighting his successes, those 5 pledges that he trots out at every opportunity. He is having a bit more luck than he was because inflation is falling. He's confident it will be halved by the end of the year from what it was, and the economy is not in recession, just about. And the small boats, OK, he's promised to stop the boats. It's not going very well, but he is keen to point out that the numbers are down about 23% on last year, though sure, 25,000 people have still crossed the channel illegally. But this afternoon, the big speech was, of course, the Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, and she has, again, as she has a habit of doing, rather set the cat among the pigeons. She has warned of a hurricane of people trying to get into Britain illegally. Of course, they've pledged to stop the boats. Her Rwanda plan, and Priti Patel's before her Rwanda plan, we're still waiting on a court judgment. So in the absence of really great success on this, she's talking very, very tough indeed. Talking about, she says, her comments on multiculturalism, having failed, have been sort of misinterpreted. But she is saying that lots of people haven't integrated into British society, that they sort of live in little pockets, talking only their own language and not mixing. And she's also upset many LGBTQ plus people today and in the last days. And during the speech, Andrew Boff, who's a member of the Conservative London Assembly, he's been a Conservative member for about 50 years, was marched out of the hall for heckling her. Now, he's very angry. He's basically saying that she's behaving atrociously towards that community. Now, Suella Braverman has subsequently said, yes, his comments were ill-advised, but he should be let back in. So Rishi Sunak very much trying to present a united party, but plenty of rows going on. Suella Braverman upsetting lots of people, and also lots of unhappiness about HS2, most notably the West Midlands Mayor Andy Street, the Conservative Mayor, and bear in mind that HS2 is definitely going to Birmingham, is very, very angry indeed about the prospect of it not continuing to Manchester.
Interesting stuff, Catherine. Thank you for that update. You are a Tory party member. You join me. You're not in Manchester.
I was there until coming down for this.
Oh, did you come back especially?
Yeah, especially for you,
What
Michelle.
a treat. Well, as a member, I will put something to you in a second, but we asked Rishi Sunak, Christopher Hope asked Rishi Sunak a question, and I thought it was quite a ballsy question, actually. Let's just listen and I'll get the response from you.
It feel to be at a conference when most members didn't vote for you?
The conference, the spirit of conference is great. You know, I've been out and about talking to members, talking to colleagues. People have a spring in their step. They can see that we're making progress.
Messing, because that is one of the things that comes through so thick and fast in my inbox. You know, he wasn't elected, we voted for Truss and all the rest of it. What do you think to his response then?
Well, it's good to be honest, right? I mean, I was the last Japanese soldier on my jungle island defending Boris Johnson. I did a round of media on the morning he went, saying he shouldn't go. I must have been the last Tory on TV saying that. And then I voted for Liz Truss. Right, so I'm kind of doubly of that position. But you know what? Now he's in the role and doing it, I'm pretty glad that Rishi Sunak's our Prime Minister. It's possible to think all of those things, right? At the time that Boris Johnson was in post, I thought it was wrong, especially given he'd won the 2019 election so handsomely, for the party to do as it did. And then I thought Liz Truss never really got a chance to get out of the starting blocks. But my point is, I'm frank about it. I voted for her and not for Sunak. Now he's there. I think he's doing a good job.
Was morale good? Honestly?
It was far better than I've seen reported in the press. I saw that one journalist who contributes to this channel occasionally said that Manchester was a ghost town. I mean, I just don't recognise that at all. It felt pretty busy to me.
Well, it was raining, so people do try and take cover, but, I mean, ghost town, that's a bit odd. Look, before I bring Michael in as well, let's listen to one more clip from Rishi Sunak, asked by Christopher Hope earlier on.
Prime Minister, what do you stand for?
I stand for doing the right thing for the country in the long term, not taking the easy way out. I think that's the change that people want to see in their politics. That's the change that I'm going to bring. And you saw that with my decision on net zero. I did something that I thought was right. You know, it was a big decision. And look, people could criticise me for that, but I thought what we're doing, the path we're on, is going to cost ordinary families £5,000, £10,000, £15,000. I didn't think that was right.
So, Michael, I'm going to get into, before the end of the programme, I want to touch on the Suella stuff towards the end, of course, the Steve Barclay and the NHS stuff and all that, but specifically on that point where Rishi Sunak's basically saying, look, I am the man for the job, I stand for the long-term, tough decisions. Do you buy that?
I don't think we've seen the evidence of that he's here for the long-term decisions. I mean, personally, I'm in favour of HS2. I would build it all the way up to Scotland if I could. I think that's the kind of thing, that's the kind of investment that would bring rewards. We'd get returns on that investment. I think scrapping that seems like a short-term decision to please some of the bean counters in the Treasury. Essentially, I think he's saying, oh, we can save a bit of money here, that will make my life easier. And I think that's really letting down future generations who would benefit from it.
But what he's saying is he's not bothered about, or as I'm interpreting what he's saying, he's not bothered about being popular. So stuff like the net zero is hitting people in their back pockets. He's got the chops to stand up and say, you know what, a lot of people will disagree with that, disagree with what I'm about to say, but so what? This is my principle. This is what I stand for.
Well, a lot of people do agree with him on that. I mean, that to me seems like that was an electoral play. He wanted to create a divide on climate change where there wasn't one. And I think what we've seen at this conference in general as well is the Tories are really struggling to find a divide with the Labour Party, and that means they keep making things up, essentially. So we sort of, a government minister yesterday sort of announcing that the government would scrap the meat tax, which isn't in place, which no one has proposed, which the Labour Party aren't in favour of. And so I think they are sort of desperately searching for divisions which aren't necessarily there. Also, Sunak, in your news bulletin, was saying that he's the change candidate. I mean, we've had 13 years of Tory government and he's calling himself the change candidate.
Michael makes a good point, because it is a little bit odd, because there was the reference to the meat tax.
Yeah.
Then there was also that, was it 7 bins or something like that, that was scrapped the other day that didn't really ever exist. What is going on there?
Michael's completely right. Neither of those were Labour Party policies. They were both policies mooted by relevant select committees. And so the government has opposed something that never actually had seen its way onto potentially being on the statute books yet. But I think on the climate change point that Michael makes, the government's done 3 things which I think are slightly different in their tone. The first was shifting back the deadline from 2030 to 2035 for the sale of new combustible engine cars. That, for me, was just pragmatic, given that Germany and France, our major competitors in that space, had done the same. So that one, I just think...
But the pushback will be, hang on, because your businesses, they've geared up to the 2030 deadline.
I know.
And now you're messing business around.
I know, but my point would be, it would be a completely different debate if Britain alone was changing that deadline and pushing it backwards. In fact, we were, in European major motor manufacturers, the last one hanging on to that earlier deadline. So that one I just thought was pragmatic. The second one, on anti-ULEZ type stuff, if I just bracket it like that, Michael's right, it was wildly popular. And let's be honest again, it's the only reason the Conservative Party won the by-election in Uxbridge and South Ruislip. Otherwise, we were doing pretty badly in Boris Johnson's old seat, and we hung on to that solely because of ULEZ. I've never seen a single issue play so prominently a role. So the Conservative Party's taken a position that is very popular. The third one on the housing stuff and insulation and so forth, that in the long term people are going to have more of an issue with. But there's no doubt it was going to impose more costs on householders. So he's got a point.
What do you think about this? I mean, it has dominated the conference this time around, the HS2. Michael says he would agree, send it all the way to Scotland. Where are you?
It's a great demonstration of my party's failure to think things through in terms of political capital. If we'd started HS2 at the northern end, where it was actually wanted the most and was popular, then by the time you got down to the leafy Chesham and Amersham seats we lose because of HS2 type arrangements, you might have had, no pun intended, some momentum behind you to carry on through with it. Instead, we've taken all of the political pain, building it where it was the hardest to build, where the opposition was the strongest.
Why was that?
I'm sure that some people were maintaining that was the smartest thing to do on engineering and so forth, and there's some technical reasons. The thing is, you've got to be more political about these things. The thing is, people come out of this conference saying the Tory party have been too political with stuff. Well, I'd rather we were more political over stuff like HS2.
Well, I suppose, I mean, the problem with HS2 was short-term political sort of bargaining, wasn't it? Because what you had is you had all these Tory MPs who didn't want to see a high-speed train. Like, I think a high-speed train going through the countryside is a nice enough thing to look at. They were all complaining. That means that so much of it is tunnelled that the costs completely ballooned. So it was a party leadership which was unwilling to take on its backbenchers that meant it rose to £100 billion, and now it's not going to go from Manchester and we're just going to get something from the outskirts of London to the outskirts of Birmingham.
The ballooning costs are about lots of things, but you've certainly got a point about the increased cost. I do think there is a lesson to learn from HS1. There are two. The first is that it can work, and it can be, even though people regard these things as expensive white elephants, they can have real impact. But the second is that people may build without tunnelling, and they may give you a station to say that they're going to sweeten the deal and help it. But then, sometimes when it suits the contractors, they'll close the station. And the people right now in Ashford or Ebbsfleet or Calais-Fretin know all about that. So sometimes you're right to be sceptical when you effectively get bought off as a local community, because people say, don't worry, we're going to give you a station and it's going to bring lots of economic growth. Because the first opportunity they've got to take out those intermediary stations, sometimes the train companies stops providing them.
But then why have they been so slow to act? Because in July 2020, the Infrastructure and Projects Authority gave HS2 the highest risk warning possible. So, I mean, this is almost, 3 years ago. So why is it now taking and obviously we've scrapped the leg up to Leeds as well. That bit has gone. So why is it taking to this kind of timing now to say, right, actually, things are getting out of control? Because what I don't understand about the Tories, it's almost like you've just come along last week and, you're sitting up and going, this project is wildly out of control. Well, hang on a second, because you've been overseeing government in this country now for a decade plus. Yep. You've had regular reports from all of these bodies and committees. There's been God knows how many reviews. So why is it only now that people have realised, on my watch, it's got out of control? There
is a small and partial excuse, which I don't pretend is sufficient, which is the impact of COVID on grand infrastructure projects around the world has been significant. But if you put that to one side, I think in answer to your question, there are three answers. The first is, each time people looked at it, they said, you've highlighted the risk, we're going to control that and we're going to make it better. We're going to bring costs down and we're going to control it. Instead, every review showed the costs were still going up. But that was the mindset with which people went into it. The second was that this is an issue on which there are genuine, strongly divided opinions on both sides within political parties, not just between them. There are strong HS2 advocates and strong HS2 critics within the Tory party, as well as on the other side.
Well, you know what? I'll let you have the final word at home. What do you make to the goings-on? Rishi, as the leader, do you back him? Are you still kind of championing him? Or did you ever champion him, actually? And now you're just saying, you know what? I didn't back him, but I have to now for the good of the party, for the greater good of the country. Your thoughts on HS2 as well. When I come back, I'll be talking about another aspect of the conference which has grabbed the headlines today. The Health Secretary, he wants to stop basically the workery in the NHS. He wants things like single-sex wards, and also he's saying that the BMA are making the strikes political now. Do you agree with him?
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Join me, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, Monday to Thursday, 9:30am.
Who benefits from that? Not the British public.
And on Fridays, join us, Tom Harwood
and Ellie Costello from Britain's Newsroom.
That's what you get with this show. That's fantastic.
If it's happening, we're talking about it on Britain's Newsroom.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, I'm Michelle Dewbs. I'm with you till 7 o'clock tonight. Get your views coming in. I'm talking to you about the goings-on at the Tory party conference in Manchester. Alex Dean and Michael Walker remain alongside me. Lots to get into tonight. I'll bring in some of your conversations. Lots of you getting in touch. I have to say, you're quite divided and some strong words coming through the inbox. I have to say, you're making me blush. Anyway, look, I want to move on. We're just across the top of the programme, and I want to move on because one of the other key major speeches today came from the Health Secretary, Steve Barclay. Let's have a listen in.
The militant BMA leadership, whose strikes have resulted in countless cancelled appointments and pose a serious threat to the NHS's recovery from the pandemic. Their consultants and junior doctors committee are relentlessly demanding massive pay rises, even if that means diverting resources from patients, and despite junior doctors having already received a pay rise of up to 10.3%.
I want to pick up with you. So much has been picked up on about lots of NHS workery and all the rest of it. And we'll move on to that bit in a second. But specifically when it comes to the strikes and the BMAs and BMA and who's to blame and all the rest of it, what do you make of some of the stuff he said today?
Well, I think there's a real attempt by the Conservative Party to paint the NHS workforce as a bunch of radicals. And I just don't buy it. You know,
the NHS workforce or the union, the BMA?
Well, the point is the union are being supported by the workforce, right? So the votes for these strikes are overwhelming, and they are by the same people who have been consultants for the past 20 years.
The workforce is going to be led by guidance from the union, though, right?
Well, no, because every time they go on strike, they have to have a ballot across the workforce, and we actually have quite strict union laws in this country. So you need at least 50% of people to vote. You need at least 40% of the total workforce to have voted to go on strike. So this isn't the case of just sort of a minority leading the rest of the workforce. The workforce are in favour of these strikes. And so you've got two explanations. One, which is that suddenly all doctors have become radical leftists who just want to bring down the government. Or the other one, which I think is a little bit more plausible, is that these are very normal professional people. But if you cut people's wages by 17% over a 13-year period, then you are going to get some kind of backlash. Now, how would you end these strikes? Now, I know people say this 35% they've asked for is very dramatic. Now, clearly that is, right? But I think you could probably end them tomorrow if the government said, we will restore your pay over a 5-year period, right? Yes, we have cut your pay since 2010. We see that you're upset. We will, over a 5-year period, restore your pay to where it was in 2010. I'm sure they would go back to work.
I was just about to respond, but I'm going to bring you in instead, Alex.
I think there's a lot of... Michael makes his case very well, the first being the strategic concession that 35% was an unreasonable demand, which is true. And it was, but let's remember the timing. It became even more unreasonable as others around them in the public sector paid less than doctors, settled for lower rises. And that's when it became so outre that the BMA was demanding what they were demanding. And I think, too, look, what Michael says about voting turnout is unarguable. You're correct. That you know, that they've turned out in the numbers that they have and in the percentages that they have. But the Health Secretary is right too that the BMA has become a great deal more hardline. And whereas once it was a much more kind of, you know, pragmatic voice of the industry, there are, it seems to me, some at least involved in that now who see it as their full-time job to be agitators. And if you don't like the point in principle, consider in practice that they said they were more willing to talk with the government in Scotland than they were with the government in Westminster because they were more in tune with their values.
Yeah.
Not actually about what they were negotiating, but because they preferred the government north of the border. And when that happens, it's a good demonstration they're not just negotiating on behalf of their members.
You're absolutely right. How would you respond to that, the Scotland thing as well?
I mean, I think the issue here is what has changed, right? So you're saying that the doctors used to be pragmatic, now they're quite militant. Now, the demographics that go into medicine haven't changed, right? The same people, when we're talking about consultants, because they'll mainly be older, they've been in the workforce for a very long time. So if these doctors have been radicalised, it's not by left-wing ideology, it's by 13 years of Tory government.
I didn't mean to interrupt, but I have a specific answer on your question, because believing it wasn't rhetorical and you were asking what's changed, I think in part the answer is the age at which people think themselves worthy to go in and take full representative positions within the BMA. Once upon a time, it was seen that you would become, a senior consultant and a super 50-something leading surgeon or whatever. Now, there are people who barely get their certificate before they think, right, I'm going to become a full-time agitator.
But I think the problem is there you're falling into the same trap, which is to see the union action as a result of decisions made by the leadership, when in fact there's a huge mandate across the workforce. So you do have to answer the question, what has changed? Why is the workforce backing strikes when they didn't used to? Because it's very, very rare for junior doctors and consultants to go on strike at the same time.
It was.
Is it that suddenly there is this new radical demographic that have all got medical degrees and are now senior doctors? Or is it that a group of very professional, hard-working people have come to the end of their tether when it comes to 13 years of Tory government?
So it's interesting. I think that one of the reasons the government is sensibly trying to make the distinction that Michael denies is that any government that's seen as going to war with the NHS will have been signing its own death warrant, and will find nobody willing to treat it in the environment that I point to. So if you're having these kind of disputes with the medical profession, you are not just, in my view, right anyway to point to this, but it's sensible to seek to peel away the more extreme end of the union representing people in that discussion from the workforce as a whole, because there's a great wellspring of support and positivity about our health service. There is one thing that the Health Secretary could do that I think would help us as a country, which is to seek to examine what the NHS does well and does badly. Because it isn't like any major institution. It does some things well, it does some things badly. The trouble is we treat it so much like a cult at the moment, in which we are all members, by the way. It's treated so much like a cult that we don't get any meaningful conversation about results.
Let's talk about the other aspects of what Steve Barclay had to say as well. I think I've got a clip, some of this too.
I know as Conservatives, we know what a woman is. And I know the vast majority of NHS staff and patients do too. That is why I ordered a reversal of unacceptable changes to the NHS website that erased references to women for conditions such as cervical cancer. And that is why today I am going further by announcing that we will change the NHS constitution following a consultation later this year to make sure we respect the privacy, dignity and safety of all patients, recognise the importance of different biological needs and protect the rights of women.
What did you make to that, Michael?
I'm a bit exasperated by it, I suppose. And the reason I say that is because we've got 7 million people on waiting lists for NHS care. You've got people waiting for a year for a hip replacement. And we have a health secretary standing up and getting an applause line out of sort of shifting the deck chairs when it comes to what patient goes to what ward. Now, I don't actually personally have particularly strong feelings about trans people on hospital wards. I think it's up to hospital management. I can see how there are sort of potentially conflicting rights here. But the idea that this should be sort of a piece of political football just seems nonsense to me. This is the kind of thing that should be decided by NHS managers in response, in conversation with experts, and yes, maybe some people in the health department. The idea that this should be a sort of manifesto issue, a general election issue, when we've got 7 million people on waiting lists. You've got to remember, the number of trans people is very, very small. So essentially what you're saying to someone is...
Well, no, that's as defined in the last census, and not as we know, that life will have massively moved on from there, and there was some contention about how the question was asked in that census anyway.
Well, it's still going to be very small, isn't it? So the chances of going into hospital and being next to a trans person is relatively low. Now, I can...
Sorry.
The trouble with Michael's position is that the guidance that the NHS has... This is unlike where you were saying people who were railing against policies that didn't exist. This was current NHS guidelines that said transsexual people, transgender people, could be placed on single-sex wards on the basis of the gender with which they identified, rather than the gender that they actually were. So that was the status quo. And the trouble is, that position had been reached by NHS managers having the kinds of conversations with experts and consultants groups and so forth that you were suggesting suggesting they had. So for me, this is the kind of thing where political leadership is required, and the elected person says in the end, yeah, all right, that's all very nice, but I'm going to tell you how it's going to be.
But he's the health secretary, right? So I don't think intervention from a health secretary is unwarranted. But this is a conference speech, right? This is your key message to the party faithful and the country. And his key message to the party faithful and the country is that this very small issue, which doesn't affect many people, is now the centrepiece of the Tory when it comes to the NHS.
It affects a lot. I mean, you're saying it's a small issue that doesn't affect many people. Many women, in particular, watching this will really be yelling at their screens saying a man who just wakes up one day, sticks his pronoun badge on and a skirt on and says, today I identify as Shirley, so therefore I am going into the same ward as you, the same this or the same that and then the other. That is a big concern for women. They will say that we've worked very hard to get access to protected spaces and single-sex spaces and all the rest of it. So they will really be pushing back, saying that against you saying it's a tiny issue affecting a tiny amount of people.
Well, so there's two issues here. So one distinction that I think it was unhelpful that Steve Barclay didn't make is there's this question of self-ID. Does someone who just says I identify as a woman get to stay on a female ward? But he's saying all trans people altogether. So you can have someone who's lived half their life as a woman, who everyone recognises as a woman, who's legally identified as a woman, and they're banned from those wards. So I think that's one issue there. The other thing I do think we need to remember is that we do have some evidence about how many people are concerned about this in hospitals, because there have been freedom of information requests to hospitals to say, has any woman who was born a woman complained about trans women on their ward? Zero. So that's what I mean when I say this seems to be a problem which has been blown out of proportion for political purposes.
It can't be zero. It must be about the reporting process in that case. I accept it's going to be very low, right? But given that people have talked about their experiences online and so forth, that must be about how the NHS logs complaints rather than about there actually being zero complaints. But I wanted to talk about something different to the conversation you two were having, because I think it does matter to many people.
Make it very brief,
when you think about, only women can get cervical cancer, but cervical cancer guidance in the NHS had removed any reference to women for fear of offending men who are pretending to be women.
Well, there you go again. You know how the show works by now. The final word goes over to you on this topic. Different opinions on the panel. gbviews@gbnews.com is how you get a hold of me. When I come back, I'll be bringing in some of your comments, and I also want to talk about Michael Gove and specifically about house building in this country. Are we building enough or not? You tell me.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Dewbs and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, Monday to Thursday, 9:30 a.m.
Who benefits from that? Not the British public.
And on Fridays, join us, Tom Harwood
and Ellie Costello from Britain's Newsroom.
That's what you get with this show, that's fantastic.
If it's happening, we're talking about it on Britain's Newsroom.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry with you till 7 o'clock tonight, alongside me PR consultant Alex Dean and the contributing editor at Novara Media, Michael Walker. And in Stockport has been in touch saying, please can you say thank you to your guests. They're both putting forward differing views, conceding when a good point is raised on the opposite side. It's healthy, informative conversations. There you go.
Couldn't agree more.
Says Anne. That's what we want. I actually think in society, if we had more respectful debate, respectful disagreement, the country perhaps might end up in a slightly better place than it has been for quite some time. Keep your thoughts coming in. Let me just see what some of you are saying. Darren says, I've been a lifelong Tory voter, but my loyalty has been fatally challenged now. He talks about challenges in a few different areas, actually, and he says, he's struggling now to justify incompetence and the outcome remaining the same. Change the people, he says, but surely the public will make the same decision again next year. Lee's just saying, are you seriously telling me, Michael, that there is no divide over net zero? A lot of people disagreeing with that point that you made there as well. Eileen said, I'd vote for Rishi purely because the alternative, i.e. Starmer, is very, very scary for this country. And she says, and that is coming from a person that's voted Labour for most of my life. HS2 divided opinions on that one. Leon says the reason it was started in the south was due to the cost of land. He says northern land is so much cheaper that they left the cheaper part until the end to try and insulate themselves against inflationary costs. That's Leon's perspective. Russ says the money spent on HS2 should have been spent updating the existing networks and try and get people onto the trains that we currently have. Good luck with that when they're running half the time anyway. Michael Gove, let's talk about him. He took to the stage today. Let's have a listen.
We need to ensure that every family has a safe, decent, warm home. We need to ensure that many more young people can have a home of their own. And we're on track to deliver 1 million new homes in this Parliament. But we need many more. And our long-term plan for housing will deliver the attractive, affordable new homes that we need. We'll build in the hearts of towns and cities and on brownfield land, because that cuts commuting times, it helps revitalise high streets, and it protects the green belt. We will ensure that our new homes are energy efficient, zero carbon ready, and built to the highest aesthetic standards.
Alex, you like what you hear?
I do. I like a lot of it. The trouble is that you say that at national level and you get to local level and permission for these things is refused. And, you know, you can be as creative as you like as a developer and, you know, you put in your plans for the brownfield site that government tells you they want you to build on. And not least because people who say in theory that they want somewhere to be bought, not least because they want their children or grandchildren to be able to buy a house, always say, no, not in my backyard. So there's a cultural problem there, whatever the Secretary of State says. Then just, and I'm a good Tory, but I can't help look at the maths and say that if we've said we're going to build 300,000 homes a year is where we need to be, 1 million in a parliament isn't enough. So, you know, there's a bit of a problem on the maths. And the other trouble, and this is not partisan because it's been true of the Labour Party and the Tories, is that each and every year government says we need 300,000 new homes in this country. Each and every year they fall short, and the next year they say we need 300,000 new homes in this country. There's a basic problem. If you didn't do what you needed to do last year, you need to grow your targets, and it seems we never do it.
Michael?
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, I actually feel sorry for Michael Gove. As you say, he's sort of standing in front of a conference and speaking to the nation and bragging about having missed his targets. They've been said, they had said, they want to build 300,000 homes a year, sorry. Clearly, they're only managing 200,000. And actually, Michael Gove was, I think, the current cabinet minister who went in with the best ideas, right? He had two two big policies which were sort of the centrepiece of his idea when he went into that department. One was planning reform to make it easier to build and harder to block housing by NIMBYs, and two, renters reform to make it more stable if you are in the private rental sector like myself, so that then you wouldn't have the risk of being kicked out every 12 months because you'd have a long-term tenancy. They were both good policies, both completely destroyed and blocked by his backbenchers. So now he's got to stand up in front of the conference and basically say nothing, brag about the fact that he's missing his own targets. I mean, it's even worse than his policies got blocked, because he actually had to make policy worse than it already was, because it was the case that there was a legal target for 300,000 homes a year. It wasn't met, but he scrapped that on the whim of NIMBY backbenchers. So he is someone, I think, who did go into that role with relatively good intentions and has been completely thwarted by his party's backbenchers.
There is a bit that I like that gets under-recognised. You know, he's brought in a guy called Nick Boys-Smith to be advisor in this space, Create Streets, a campaign for gentle density, and basically city centres that look a bit more like, Amsterdam or Paris, with 3 or 4 story nice townhouses rather than the sprawl that we've encouraged with our, or indeed high-rises, massive high-rises that we've built, both of which are bad actually for city centres and for urban development. That stuff may, hindsight's very interesting. People may look back and say the Tories missed this, that or the other in government, but that policy was right and had a lasting impact, and I hope we see more of it.
Well, you've got to build them, though. I mean, that's a preference, isn't it? I don't think they've actually managed to build many of them.
Are there any NIMBYs out there? Because you do get the blame, NIMBYs, for quite a lot. If you are someone that's nodding along, going, yeah, we definitely need more homes, while simultaneously saying, yeah, but not at the end of my street, thank you very much. I'm fascinated to hear, if not at the end of your street, then where? And do you think, actually, if everyone has that NIMBY attitude, we ever will get close to where we need to be? I'm interested on your thoughts on that one. After the break, look, the big one, Suella Braverman, she has been speaking out. Of course, it won't surprise you to know she's been absolutely battered for some of the stuff that she says. We'll look into it and get a response from the guys. I'll see you in 2.
Join me, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, Monday to Thursday, 9:30am.
Who benefits from that? Not the British public.
And on Fridays, join us, Tom Harwood
and Ellie Costello from Britain's Newsroom.
That's what you get with this show. That's fantastic.
If it's happening, we're talking about it on Britain's Newsroom.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7pm.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11pm for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11pm every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11am on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6pm, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry with you till 7. Alex Dean, Michael Walker remain alongside me. One of my viewers, and I must say, I've just scrolled on and I've lost your name, but you'll know who you are. You said, Michelle, it's time for democracy to be respected in this country. If we want to make big changes, you're telling me, it needs to go to the people via referendum to decide. Cool, blimey. Do you think we'd get anything done if every major decision went to the public? What about how divided we would all become? Do you remember? We never really recovered from the division of Brexit, have we? Anyway, you tell me your thoughts on that. But, of course, the big speech today was Suella Braverman. She had lots to say. Let's get straight into it.
The wind of change that carried my own parents across the globe in the 20th century was a mere gust compared to the hurricane that is coming. Let me tell you, our country has become enmeshed in a dense net of international rules that were designed for another era. And it is Labour that turbocharged their impact by passing the misnamed Human Rights Act. I'm surprised they didn't call it the Criminal Rights Act. There's another reason I think we will win the next election. You see, we have a secret weapon. Well, not that secret. Everyone in this hall knows it. I think everyone who'll be at Labour conference knows it too. And our friends in the media definitely know it. Our secret weapon is Sir Keir Starmer.
Now, I can tell you, I've got some other clips, but for time reasons, I'm just going to bring you guys in instead, because she also was saying stuff about people in the Labour Party have what she's almost calling luxury beliefs. They don't need to worry so much about people coming in and taking their jobs because they're more likely to employ those people to mow their lawns and all the rest of it. I can tell you, it got a huge round of applause, her speech, as we just heard. What did you make to it?
So that point about luxury beliefs, it phrased in different ways, has been a mainstay of our debate in this country for some time. People who are so wealthy they don't need to worry about tax rises is a very good example. So people who've got lots of investments and savings and can afford basically to live almost without working care far less about, they're far less sensitive to rising rates of tax on working people than others. So I think that's a long-standing one, and there's a lot of truth to it. But I thought the interesting thing from the clip that you played was the Keir Starmer stuff. I think there's some way to go on that, actually, to define the Conservative Party's position vis-à-vis Starmer. Because, on one hand, I don't think he's a good politician, and I don't think the country's sold on him at all. But on the other hand, I think it's unambiguous that he's a magnitude better than his predecessor. You know, and one of the big advantages the Conservative Party had at the last election was Jeremy Corbyn, and that's a factor that's now, whatever you think of him, he was an electoral disaster for the Labour Party. So if the Conservative Party is going to successfully demonstrate the apparent faults in Keir Starmer, we've got to get on with it.
Michael?
I think there's a couple of problems with the luxury belief issue. So I suppose one is that it's sort of imposing these views on the Labour Party that it doesn't actually hold. Yes, there are some academics who want to abolish prisons and abolish borders, but the Labour leadership, no one in the shadow cabinet wants to do that, right? It's actually a very moderate Labour Party who is standing to be elected. The other problem, I think, with it is that we've had a Conservative Party that really should be standing on their record. They've been in power for 13 years, but they can't because what's happened over those 13 years, we've had the longest period of wage stagnation in history. Now, for me, a luxury belief is thinking that anything other than that is the key issue facing this country. If you've got people who are waiting a year for a hip replacement, if you've had people who haven't had, let alone haven't had a wage rise for 13 years, have had their wage cut over the past 13 years, not caring about that and thinking these issues are more important, that, for me, is a luxury belief.
Yeah, do you know, I've got to just get that off my chest. Everyone complains when I go on this little rant, but it really annoys me, everyone criticising, or the Tories are to blame for all this NHS waiting list stuff. Everyone sat at home and cheered the fact that the NHS basically became, for lots of intents and purposes, COVID-only service. Lots of people cheered that on and now sit there arguing about waiting lists.
And that's one of the reasons our waiting list went up so much. But the other, let's be clear, the other is the strikes that might... I mean, people are entitled to withdraw their Labour, but we can't pretend they haven't increased waiting lists.
Let's ask this hurricane thing, because that clip I just played then, she's calling migration like a hurricane. She's been criticised for that. People are saying, what what's the matter with the language and all the rest of it. But I can tell you now, there's a lot of support for that kind of language.
Well, of course, between over 2 years, we'll have had more than 1 million people net migration coming into this country. If you can't sort of use more flowery rhetoric at that point, when is it? 2 million, 3 million? So it seems to me that she's perfectly entitled. I might not use that phrase myself, but she's perfectly entitled to use it.
Is it dangerous, that kind of, rhetoric, whatever you want to call it, is it?
Is it dangerous or not? I'm not sure it's particularly accurate sort of explanation of what we've been seeing over the past couple of years. Yes, there are more people who want to move now than before. That's partly because of awareness. You know, more people have smartphones in sub-Saharan Africa. They can see what life is like in Europe and think maybe they want a part of that. Perfectly reasonable. I'd probably want to do the same if I was in sub-Saharan Africa. You wouldn't
pretend to be seeking asylum or a refugee if you were actually an economic migrant.
Well, the issue, what we're talking about here, is that many people who are coming to Britain, or most people crossing the Channel, we don't actually have many sub-Saharan Africans coming here, and if they do, they're probably from Sudan or Ethiopia, countries where nearly everyone leaving is actually an asylum seeker. So I suppose to go back to my original point in terms
we
of...
don't know where they're from because they've tossed all their passports away and filmed themselves on TikTok, but go on.
I mean, I would say that's a bit of a misleading sort of explanation as to what we're seeing on the border. Well, because we have the data. Most people are from Iran, Afghanistan, these countries where we recognise there is a great deal of political repression, often because we intervened in catastrophic wars beforehand.
But that's where they say they're from, at least. Yeah. That's the point you're making. The smartphone in which they see the better quality of life in the West also tells them how to pull the wool over the eyes of those assessing them.
Well, I mean, if you're saying you're from Iran, I mean, there's so many of these countries from the Middle East that we have bombed that it'd be difficult to sort of pretend that you were from somewhere else. You're going to have a claim wherever you're from. I suppose the issue with calling it a hurricane, why have we had net migration which is so high? We've had 300,000 people come here to study at our universities. We've had 200,000 people who've been offered a job. You know, this is all quite normal, right? This is what's keeping our universities afloat. This is subsidising British students. To call it a hurricane makes it seem like a natural disaster, when actually there's been a decision made by policymakers, which is having this many people come to the country is actually very advantageous for a number of reasons. So it seems dishonest then to make it seem like a weather event.
And there's going to have to be some unpicking of that position if the India trade deal is going to get unlocked, because it's very clear the Indians, not least, want more visas available to their workforce and to their students. And whatever you think about our university system basically being dependent on foreign students now, as it is, the notion that we've got somewhere, I think it's between a fifth and a sixth of the numbers of Indian students, of Chinese students are from India. Democratic, English fluent. I'd rather, frankly, have more students from India.
Well, there you go. That is a conversation that will rumble on and on. Lots of you guys getting in touch. Ruth says she's a proud NIMBY. She doesn't want all these houses near her, she says. Why? Because it's all well and good building the houses, she asks, but what about the infrastructure? What do all these people do? The infrastructure, she says, is lacking. Look, I'll tell you what's lacking. Time. Flies when you're having fun. Michael, Alex, thanks for your company. Thank you at home. Don't go anywhere. Nigel Farage up next. Night-night.
Hello again, I'm Alex Burkill and here's your latest GB News weather bulletin. We have some pretty wet weather to come across northern parts through the next 24 hours, but further south it is a drier picture, and that's because of this area of high pressure that's going to build and lead to a quieter spell as we go through the rest of the week for southern areas. Further north and tightly packed isobars show that it's blustery, and we have a weather system that's going to push in as we go through tonight and into Wednesday. Some heavy rain affecting particularly western parts of Scotland through the next 24 hours or so, but even some of that spreading further eastwards. We are going to see increasing amounts of cloud across parts of England and Wales, but in the east, where we have some clear skies, rural spots could just about dip into single figures. As we go through Wednesday then, a north-south split, quite cloudy and wet across many northern areas, particularly western, southwestern parts of Scotland. Here rainfall totals could build up, there could be a little bit of localised flooding and also some disruption to travel. Further north across Scotland, it's going to be a showery day and also a few showers across parts of England and Wales, but also some bright sunny spells, and with winds a little bit lighter than they have been recently and temperatures getting to highs around 19-20, it should feel relatively warm. As we go through Thursday then, staying largely dry across more southeastern parts of the UK, but notice some wet weather that will push in across parts of Northern Ireland, into Wales, Northern England and also across much of Scotland. Further wet weather to come, particularly across Scotland as we go through Thursday into Friday, but into the weekend we're going to see temperatures warming.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Join me, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, Monday to Thursday, 9:30 a.m.
Who benefits from that? Not the British public.
And on Fridays, join us, Tom Harwood
and Ellie Costello from Britain's Newsroom.
That's what you get with this show. That's fantastic.
If it's happening, we're talking about it on Britain's Newsroom.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasts,